As we commemorate Martin Luther King Day, let's reflect on the year that our community has experienced in the fight for racial equality. Our next guest is an advocate in that fight. He's a distinguished university chair and professor of history and founding director of the Racial Justice Initiative at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. And that is the place where George Floyd was murdered by police officers in 2020, an incident that sparked protests and nationwide movements. We welcome Dr. Yohuru Williams to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us to offer your perspective on the significance of today.
Thanks for having me.
If Dr. King were alive today, what would he think about what we're dealing with in terms of voting rights and voter suppression?
I think Dr. King would be very disappointed in a large sense because of the fact that we've gone back. So the reality is that you saw, particularly in the last years of his life, Dr. King really making a concerted effort to deal with issues of poverty and recognizing the importance of voting rights as a critical foundation for American democratic participation. For African Americans in particular in this moment, when we look at the landscape, when we think about what happened last year in Georgia, what happened in the election as a whole, and we also consider the failure of the government to move on new federal voting rights legislation, I think Dr. King would be very concerned about where we are and would be pushing and advocating for us to really address this issue once and for all, which is a perennial problem, particularly for people of color, particularly for the African American community.
Yeah, and we so often heard King speak about just the fundamental rights of voting and how important it was. Talk about the police brutality issues. What would he say to us today?
Dr. King, again, I think would be very concerned. When we think about the civil rights movement, we often think about the police dogs in Birmingham. We think about the excessive brutality that we witnessed on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the use of police to suppress demonstrators who were advocating for fundamental rights for African Americans. But the reality is police brutality has been a big part of the African American experience. And I think Dr. King would caution us to remember that this isn't just about dealing with the issue of police brutality, it's about dealing with systems and looking at the larger issues that influence that police brutality. The fact that we still deal with segregated neighborhoods, which allow police to deal with communities of color in the way that they do. We're still looking at the social determinants of health, which allow mental illness and other challenges to proliferate in our community. We're still dealing with access to guns and policies and practices and procedures which encourage mass incarceration. These are all interrelated issues, and I think King would caution us to say, definitely deal with the issue of police brutality, but be cognizant of the fact that we have to deal with these other systemic challenges that contribute to that problem.
And it just feels like, you know, we take a couple steps forward and then these days I say several steps backward. Do you feel like that we have made progress in terms of racial justice over the past year, or are we backtracking at this point?
I think we've made progress in terms of dialogue. I think we've made progress in terms of people taking an unflinching look at these challenges in American society and culture and having the willingness and the strength to have courageous conversations about what they mean. At the same time, when we look at the backlash against critical race theory, for example, the fantasy about critical race theory and its impact on K-12 education, when we consider the long shadow of January 6th, when we look at the failure of Congress not only to pass the voting rights legislation, but the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the reality is we have taken a hard step back, and we have to worry in this moment in particular, because this tends to be a theme in our history, that we cannot take our foot off the gas with regard to pushing for these issues. The lessons of the civil rights movement, the lesson that we can take from the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, freedom is a constant struggle. It requires all of us to commit daily to the push for racial equality in this country. And ultimately, as we saw in the case of Georgia, and as we celebrate people like Stacey Abrams, Black women in particular, in the way that they voted in the last election, that African Americans really have been the saviors of democracy in a long way. We define our democracy, we define our growth as a republic in terms of how we treat people of color, and African Americans have been at the forefront of that from the start of this country's history.
And when you talk about what King went through, you know, I just say, if King and so many people were strong enough to live through it, our kids are strong enough to learn about it. I often think of MLK Day as sort of a benchmark or a gauge for where we're at in terms of civil rights in our country. And so I just want your perspective. What do you consider, I guess, noteworthy about this year?
I think a couple of things. I think that, we've seen the holiday evolve over the years. It first was about just a commemoration of the man in his life. And in the mid 90s, that moved to a day of service. I think this year you hear a lot of people articulating the need for us to use King Day to make year-long commitments to racial equity and justice. I think that's important. So I think what's significant about this year is that as people are going out to honor the Reverend Dr. King in whatever way they do today, they think about making that year-long commitment. Secondly, I think in the African American community in particular, I think it's important for us to start maybe thinking about this, even though we are honoring the legacy and life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, as an Ancestors Day. Who are the other women and men in our history who were advocates for civil rights and for racial equality? You just showed an image of Malcolm X, but what about important women like Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer? Celebrating the diversity of our community in terms of LGBTQ, people like Bayard Rustin and Pauli Murray. We have a rich legacy of resistance to racial inequality in our history. We should celebrate some of those people and consider some of the unique ways, the innovative ways they sought to challenge inequality and apply those in our lives as well.
I think that's such an excellent point, because when you look at the curriculum that we all grew up with, we were not taught about these people. Here at BNC, we've made a commitment to sort of highlight them every day, but many of them new to us. And there's so many people than just that handful. There's so many more people than just the handful that we've been taught in our curriculum in the past. And also having to now look at that curriculum with a more critical eye and realize so much has been omitted from it. What is your personal hope for the progress and advancement of Black people, and what can we improve upon?
Such a great question. I think my personal hope in particular for this year is that we not only push through this much needed, or help to push through this much needed voting rights legislation and deal with the issue of police accountability, but that we also evolve our movement to tackle issues of racial equality that are underneath the surface. The reality is the social determinants of health are playing out in terrible ways in the fight against coronavirus. Communities of color, African Americans, really have been at the forefront of that in a very negative way. So we have to tackle these other issues. It's where Dr. King was at the close of his life and what he writes about memorably in his final book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? This idea that we have to tackle issues of poverty, we have to think about segregation and racial inequality as a many-headed hydra. You can't just cut off one head and assume that you've conquered the beast. The reality is that we have to really strike at the heart of this divisive impulse, this desire for racial dominance and white supremacy, which has had a detrimental impact not only on people of color, not only on Black people, but the reality is, which has undermined the very notion of American democracy.
Dr. Williams, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us this morning and for starting your day with us.